Here's an example of one of the problems on the homework assignment or class assignment that I have posted. So for this one, again, we have this equal sign. So we are solving now the quadratic for the solutions, which another word for solutions are x-intercepts or the zeros of this quadratic. We know it's a quadratic because it has that x squared value, but right now we don't have it in standard form. Remember, we want standard form looking like this: ax squared plus bx plus c. And right now we don't have it in that form. So let's move it around so that I do have it like that. So I can move this 6x over to the right, and I get 0 equals 4x squared minus 6x minus 1. Okay, and I put the 6x in the middle, right, because it's my bx or my linear term. And the minus 1 goes in the end. So now to solve this out, and I can move the 0 to the other side. So a lot of us like it looking like this. Okay. So my first step on that worksheet is to move any constants over. So I have a minus 1 here. So let's move it over to the right side. So we're going to add 1. Okay, remember we want our a value to be 1. So we need to factor something out of these two terms. We're going to factor out the 4 because we want this to be 1. And it's okay if we get a fraction. So we take out the 4, we have x squared minus 6 fourths turned into, you can just leave it as a fraction if you want, 3 halves x, or you can leave it as 6 fourths x. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Equals 1. And I leave a space here because I want you to remember that we are completing the square. We want that perfect square trinomial. So I leave the space just in case, just as a reminder. All right, and then to complete the square, remember we take this linear term, we divide it by 2, and we square it. You can do that in your calculator. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, and if you divide that by 2, you get 3 fourths, or 0.75, and then we have to square it. So we get 3 fourths and square it. So I'm going to leave it as a fraction just so it's not too messy. So we get 9 over 16. So remember, this value gets added up here and gets put over here. If I add it to the left, you have to also do it to the right. So I'm going to have 4 parentheses x squared minus 3 halves x plus, what was my number? 9 over 16. Okay. Equals, so we had the 1 plus, we had the 9 over 16, but remember we always have to do whatever is, we have to put this GCF there, because if we were to distribute this, we have 4 times 4x squared, 4 times 3 halves, 4 times 9 6. So we're not adding just a 9 sixteenths, we're adding a 4 times 9 sixteenths. So just remember that if you are factoring something out. Okay, and then we can factor this because now it is our perfect squared trinomial. Remember, this turns into whatever that half value was. So we did 3 divided by 2 is 3 fourths. Squared equals, and then we can simplify that side. So 9 over 16 times 4 plus 1. I'm going to just leave it as a decimal, 3.25. 3 and 1/4, 4/3, whatever you want to do. No, 4/3, whatever the fraction is. All right, and then we have to solve for x. We have 1x here, so what do we do first on this side? Divide by 4. So the 4's cancel out. So now we're left with x minus 3/4 squared equals, on the right side we have 3.25 divided by 4. And I have decimals here. I know a lot of us don't like working with fractions. You can have it as a fraction. It might get a little messy. All right, and then when we do to both sides, take the square root, right? We want to get rid of this 2 value. So now I got to do the square root of this decimal, which is not a nice number. So I'm going to leave it like that. So we have x minus 3/4 equals, and then plus or minus the square root of this. Because when you take the square root of something, remember the value, the answer could be either positive or negative. Because when you square a value, it always turns positive. So we're not sure, right? We always have 2 for the quadratic. And then to get x by itself, you had to add 3/4 to both sides. So our final answer should be 3/4 plus or minus the square root of 0.8125. All right. I know that looks messy. The radical could be a fraction, but we do have the 2 solutions. You can get the 2 separate solutions if you want to take them separately. You could do 3/4 plus the radical, and 3/4 minus the radical if you want, but you can also leave it like that. Okay, so that's one of those that you can solve.